Welcome to the London History Podcast. I'm your host, Hazel Baker from londonguidedwalks.co.uk. I'm here guiding you through the captivating tales that have shaped our great city. Today, we're taking you back to an extraordinary winter's evening on the 30th of December 1952, to the heart of the capital, and to an unforgettable act of quick thinking and courage on one of London's most iconic landmarks. Joining me today is Londoner Carl Stanley, a listener of London History Podcast, who got in touch and asked if we could cover this event. I responded and said, of course, if you cover it with me. And here we are today. So, join us as we uncover the facts, the first-hand accounts, and the official investigations behind the day Londoners witnessed a bus take flight over Tower Bridge. It's a story that combines everyday heroism, historic engineering, and the unpredictable drama of life in mid-century London. Let's get started. So, welcome, Carl.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Now, let's just get this sorted to everybody's mind that we're talking about the pretty Tower Bridge and not London Bridge, which everyone seems to get confused about.
Yes, the one with the Gothic towers, the Gothic spires, that Tower Bridge, that's the one we're talking about.
The pretty one.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so would you like to share with everybody what we're talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would like to just basically share and talk about the story of Albert Gunter and his bus, his day job, his commute across Tower Bridge, and how he jumped Tower Bridge after it started opening.
Sounds like a movie, but this was something in real life, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It does sound very Hollywood. It really does. And I think that's what makes it all the more fascinating, to be honest, that this was actually a real event that happened. And not even recently, it happened back in 1952 as well.
30th of December 1952, so a very cold, dark night, Tuesday night. And he was driving the number 76 bus, wasn't he?
In fact, he was driving the number 78 bus. Yeah, it was on another number 78 bus doing the Shoreditch to Dulwich route.
Shoreditch to Dulwich. So what? That's not 78 now. What is it now?
To be honest, I'm not too sure. I don't really frequent the buses, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm more of a tube person, so.
Oh, I love a good bus, especially sitting at the top and pretending to be the driver.
Well, you could always do the DLR for that if you want to pretend to be the driver.
That is true. I haven't done the new ones yet either, so that's something to tick off my list. So he was a bus driver and he was driving over Tower Bridge.
He was indeed. And if you don't mind, just to give a bit of background context to the story. It was, as we've aforementioned, it was the 30th of December 1952. And don't forget, at this time, or during this time, it was London had the Great Smog, the pea supers of 1952, and it was only just after this event. So the smogs were still kind of in the air, in the atmosphere. They were starting to clear, but they hadn't fully cleared. So this still made the atmosphere and the environment around London very hazy, very foggy, still very murky at times as well. Added to this event, when it happened, it was the late evening as well. So not only did you still have the remnants of the Great Smog, but it was also dark, naturally dark, hazy. Visibility was very poor. And then just to give an extra bit of a layer of context around Tower Bridge itself, they were operated manually by watchmen in terms of the raising of the bridge, of the bascules. Their job was to manually close the gates to the bridge, to ring a warning bell, and to change the road signals from green to red for the traffic. And visibility was absolutely vital and crucial for this to happen. So that's a bit of context around the background of the story. So I think you can kind of see where this all may lead towards.
Yeah, I think also it's kind of like a happy story after everything that I heard about the smog events of 1952. 12,000 people died, about 4,000 people in the 5 days of the main smog between the 5th and the 9th of December. And we're talking about the 30th of December, so just coming out of that. And, suddenly there's a really interesting, quite a unique story, and we're still talking about it even now. We're also talking about really dark times for December 30th for those who are listening in summertime in Australia. This is the depths of winter for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And winter for us anyway can be quite misty, quite hazy and foggy as it is. So so add into the fact that we're only just coming out at that time of the Great Smog, it's just really bad in terms of visibility. But yes, that was the background. That was a bit of context. So anyway, the driver of this bus, Albert Gunter, he was on it. I'd say he was just doing his daily job. He was on his Shoreditch to Dulwich route, and he approaches Tower Bridge. And as he approaches Tower Bridge, he notices the traffic light is green. There are no warning bells sounding. It all seems normal, basically, to proceed. So, in fact, that is what he does. He proceeds. And only when he's going across the bridge does he suddenly realise, to his shock and amazement, that the bridge road is starting to sort of shift and move, and the actual bascule is starting to rise. At this moment in time, obviously, you could imagine the sort of panic that's settling in. And as the bascule is rising itself, it's already too late to stop. You can't just stop on the bridge, it's rising. It's also too late to reverse. You can't just reverse off the bascule, it's too late, it's already rising. So Albert Gunter, he only really had one real choice, only one thing he could do. So he sort of, in a very Hollywood fashion, in a very Fast and Furious type of fashion, he slams the bus into gear and he absolutely floors it and just goes for it, basically.
He didn't have very much option. I think there was 40 passengers on the bus.
Yeah, I think around that number, around 40, I think. But also, just to give a little bit of information about the bus itself. The bus, it was a Regent Mark III double-decker bus, which was one of the most commonly operated buses around London at the time in the 1950s. And it weighed around about 7 tons. And on top of that, add to that, its top speed was around about 40 miles per hour. So to even think about jumping the bridge in something like that is just like bonkers, basically, absolutely mind-boggling. But that is what he did.
As you said, I mean, he didn't have very much option. I mean, he was a 46-year-old driver. He was very experienced. You can't go backwards. So the only thing to go is forward. You put your foot down and just hope for the best.
Yeah, absolutely. That is all you can do. So he floored it. He went for it. And against all the odds, he was somehow successful. He managed to jump the gap. He managed to land the bus without crashing it either. It was quite a remarkable feat, to be fair. Afterwards, there were sort of like initial injury reports that came out afterwards, but they were a little bit vague and hazy. For example, some reports said that Albert Gunter himself, the bus driver, he had fractured his leg, but other reports said no, it was a passenger that had broken a collarbone. So we're not entirely sure. That seems a little bit vague. But however, what we do know is that everyone on board was safe and alive.
It's amazing, really, when you think about those old style buses that you see in the old black and white movies. I mean, nowadays, the tests that the buses have to do and all the whole going up on ramps and this, that and the other. I mean, I think maybe a more modern bus would have a better chance of bouncing back from that 5-foot drop. But for an old style bus, 40 miles an hour at top speed, at that gradient as well, and just having to go for it, and for no serious injuries, I mean, that's a success story, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And it's absolutely remarkable. Such an achievement as well. I mean, as you alluded to, like from modern day times, I mean, even for a modern day bus to try and jump the gap when the bridge is opening is quite unthinkable. So yeah, in the 1950s, with the technology of the buses, then it was unbelievably remarkable. And in fact, the bus itself was reported to sustain very little to no damage itself, which in itself is quite incredible.
I see, they built things to last then, you see.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Cool.
What about this then? Because, he didn't have his own TikTok account and he couldn't, announce it to everybody. So how do we know that? Because you can imagine the Earth is trying to keep that on the down low.
Yeah, but as you can imagine, something back in those times as well, something quite remarkable such as this, the media were straight on it. They were all over it. The media in those days, obviously not social media, but we're on about the press, the newspapers. So they were there, they were on scene, they were trying to get the lowdown, the information. And they did manage to interview a couple of people. For example, there was one passenger, Peter Dunn. He spoke to the press and he basically just told them about, upon landing, there was such a loud crashing sound, a crashing bang, and he was actually launched and thrown from his seat as well. So he told of that. There was another
So
passenger.
no seatbelts either, are there? So they would have been just sitting on one of those bouncy seats and then up into the ceiling you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Say no seatbelts or anything like that. So they really were thrown from their seat. There was a second passenger as well that gave an interview to the press. Her name was May Walshaw, and she also described being thrown from her seat upon the landing, the loud impact, etc. She also said that she was so distraught by the event that she would never use a bus again. She would never take a bus again. She was that impacted by it. However, she was eternally grateful for Albert Gunter and his bravery, basically. And for Albert himself, the main man himself, he was also interviewed, not by a newspaper, he was actually interviewed by Time magazine. And he basically gave a little bit of insight as to his thoughts and feelings and how he went for the jump, basically. So he said to Time magazine that in his previous career, he was a tank driver in the military. So because of this experience, he knew that heavy vehicles could jump gaps if needed be. And because of the situation he was in heavy vehicle, he had the tank driving experience. He thought, what the heck, give it a go. So he gave that interview and he gave that little bit of insight as well, which I feel was quite fascinating to have that sort of background and context to him as well and his feelings about it.
You see, knowing that you were coming on, I thought I'd do my own little research, and this draws up a really interesting point, because you're saying he was a tank driver. I didn't come up with that.
Oh.
I found in the Holloway Press an article of interviewing his wife rather than him. Yeah, and it says that he served as an auxiliary fireman during the worst of the London raids. And they must have quoted from him, because he says it was my worst experience yet. But then the wife picks up and starts describing exactly what had happened.
Right.
So
multiple accounts and reports, basically, there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit of a media celebrity then, I'd imagine at this point, a minor media celebrity.
Yeah, I mean, this is on the 2nd of January that this was published. So he must have been telling that story for so many times in those couple of days. And also, you'd think that there'd be some mention of his leg if he had been hurt then.
Yes, absolutely. And in terms of the reports, there was then a newspaper demand, basically, for an inquest into this incident. So the newspapers are on the back of the authorities, basically trying to find out, how did something like this even occur? How did something like this even happen? So eventually the Corporation of London did admit fault and take responsibility for it. They blamed the on-duty watchman at Tower Bridge at the time. He was blamed for misjudgment and error. And basically...
And what else did they blame him? What did they take account?
Oh, sorry.
That he was very new, he wasn't experienced, and he lacked training.
Oh, was that? See, I didn't know that part of it. I just knew that he basically took the full brunt of the blame, the poor unfortunate soul. So yeah, he took the full brunt of it, really. But trying to basically get some perception or insight around it. I don't know if we relate back to the beginning, as I said, we were coming out at the time of the Great Smog of London, and visibility was really poor. So I don't know if kind of that played a part into it. If the watchman just didn't see the road traffic, or was just so disorientated that they just didn't realise that the traffic signals hadn't changed, or didn't give any warning or anything. I don't know if that played a part into it, but I'm only sort of assuming there.
Yeah, no idea whatsoever. I mean, I read the account of how it actually is supposed to, manually it was supposed to happen at the time. They're supposed to look for the traffic, then they make a decision based on their training or lack thereof on whether it's safe to lift the bridge. Then they press the button, the light turns on, and then there's also a bell.
Right.
So one would assume that by triggering the light, and the barricade, I think, was manual in those times, from reminding my old memories.
Yeah, I think it was.
Then it wasn't, and then the bell would have been triggered by pressing the button. So maybe he just didn't see the bus.
Yeah, that's the thing with the visibility being so poor. So yeah, we don't really know. I don't think we'll ever really know, but we can only surmise and assume, basically. But from the inquest, to say the Corporation of London, they took the blame. They blamed it on the poor watchman. And then as a follow-up, there was some compensation stroke rewards for Albert Gunter himself afterwards. So his employer, London Transport, they actually rewarded him for his quick thinking and for his bravery. They gave him £10 and they gave him an extra day off work. So that was his reward from his employer. The Corporation of London then also compensated him. And theirs was a lot more generous, to be fair. They gave him £35 as a cash reward, plus a fully paid week's holiday in Dorset. So they gave him that. And furthermore, him and his family were also invited to the Lord Mayor's party as well. So he was well compensated and looked after, basically, for his quick thinking and for his bravery. But I think the most touching part of the whole story, really, is the part where, if we remember May Walshaw, the distraught passenger who said that she would never use a bus again. Well, a year after the event, she actually got married, and she invited Albert Gunter to her wedding as a thanks for everything, basically. So I thought that was a really nice, touching tribute.
Oh, lovely. That shows that she didn't blame him. It was just the situation.
Absolutely. I think that was probably the kindest, nicest part of the reward, probably for Albert as well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, when I was having a look at the aftermath, newspapers have got to find something to print about. And I was reading once again the Holloway Press, 9th of January 1953, and talks about how the busman who jumped the gap at Tower Bridge last week, Mr. Albert Gunter of Thurbolton Street, Islington, has been invited to meet the man behind Islington's record-breaking road safety campaign, Road Safety Officer Walter Strachan. And then it goes into the campaign, and then it says, Mr. Gunter's story was told last week on our front page.
All right, so he didn't really get much. Yeah, that was it. One and done almost. That's it. He's had his 5 minutes of fame.
A little look at that once again, that article also in the Holloway Press about the children, really, about his 13-year-old daughter Edna and also his son Alan at the age of 7. And it writes like a Christmas morning, really. They wake up the next day and they read in the newspaper and they find out that it's their daddy who's the bus driver. And Edna, the daughter, was so excited that she went to the local newspaper shop and bought as many copies of the newspaper as possible because she was so proud. I mean, how lovely is that?
Yeah, it must have been really surreal as well for the children. Imagine your dad has become this almost real-life superhero. And
Yeah.
how do you deal with that? What do you do? Do you ever see your dad in a different way, in a different light? I don't know. It must have been so surreal, and I can only imagine when they got to, when they returned to school. Imagine what all the kids were saying, all their friends were saying, even the teachers. Yeah, it must have been such a weird but wonderful time for them.
I think instead of superheroes, if the kids had been asked what they want to be when they grow up, the answer would have been bus driver.
Yeah, absolutely. Better than any Superman or Spider-Man out there, be a bus driver.
Totally. Oh, fantastic story. I can't believe really that we're still talking about it now, and with all the things that happen in a crazy world, but dealing with an emergency so well and becoming a little bit of a local legend is a great story to talk about to London history.
Yeah, I think it's one of those stories as well that's relatively unknown to a lot of Londoners, especially like in modern times. I think it's one of those that kind of went under the radar slightly, which is quite surprising given the sort of, let's say, like the Hollywood nature of the incident. So it's really nice to sort of talk about it, bring it back into the modern world, so to speak, and just basically spread the word of it.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Carl, for sharing your love and enthusiasm of London history.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great. Thank you.
What an incredible journey we've taken today, revisiting one of the city's most dramatic and heartwarming moments from London history. On a cold, smoggy evening in December 1952, Albert Gunter, behind the wheel of his double-decker bus, became an unlikely London hero when quick thinking and courage helped a bus packed with passengers leap a widening gap on Tower Bridge. We've uncovered eyewitness accounts. The passengers launched from their seats without seatbelts. the astonished press interviews and touching aftermath, including rewards for Gunter and the heartfelt tributes from those whose lives were changed. We've explored the foggy winter, the mechanical quirks, the errors and lessons learned, and the enduring sense of community and gratitude in London, even amid chaos. Thank you for listening to the London History Podcast, where the everyday heroes and surprising moments of our city come to life. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe for more tales from the streets, bridges and hearts of London. A special thanks to my guest, Carl Stanley, for his curiosity and enthusiasm, and to all our listeners who keep London's stories alive. I'm Hazel Baker from londonguidedwalks.co.uk. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and above all, keep loving London.